What is up, guys? Welcome to a special bowl edition of College Football Picks with Brad Powers. Today, we're looking at the Peach Bowl and College Football Playoff semifinal between Ohio State and Georgia. Brad, very rare opportunity here, getting the Buckeyes as underdogs, but there's obviously a reason we're getting those points with the Buckeyes here. For my money, Georgia's probably the clear-cut number one team in the country with their competition and the way they've played when it has mattered the most. But is this opportunity to take these points with the Buckeyes too good to be true?
No, I don't think it is too good to be true. So I think there's some value here on the Buckeyes. Plus 6.5. There might be a few plus sevens out there if you're shopping real hard. So I like Ohio State here. And again, it goes back to what is this point spread between these two teams prior to the Michigan game for Ohio State? Georgia would be favored. And I think you're making a mistake. If you don't at least give Georgia a point and a half of home field advantage, this will be their third game in the building. Obviously, they're going to have the crowd advantage here. But even with all that said, I think the fair line is, closer to 4.5, maybe 5. I think before the Michigan game, this line might have been 3.5 or 4 with Georgia being favored. And I just don't think people fully grasp power ratings. I mean, you ask a lot of people in the betting market, Michigan crushes Ohio State at Ohio State. What's the line the next week? Well, Ohio State's still favored, believe it or not, even though Michigan won the game by 3 touchdowns. And I go back to that game. Look, Michigan was clearly the right side. Michigan obviously should have won the game. Should they have won by 3 touchdowns? I'm not sure. Ohio State was still leading at halftime, and it was still a one-possession game midway through the fourth quarter. So I think that misleading final is providing some value here on the Buckeyes.
That said, no Jackson Smith-Njigba. We've talked about this a little before about he's going to be healthy. Obviously, they haven't needed him all season, but having as many weapons as possible against a Georgia defense that somehow obviously they're full of 4 and 5-star recruits, but just to see them lose all of that talent that they did last year to the NFL draft and still play at the level that they're playing at this year is impressive. And we saw what Michigan did in the trenches to Ohio State on the lines there. I think Georgia can do the same thing with a healthy Jalen Carter and co. Does that give you any reason to pause there?
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, Georgia is basically a Michigan, but probably on steroids. So, yeah, I mean, after watching the last 2 Ohio State-Michigan games, it does give you some concern. Look, there are no easy layups this time of the year, especially in a playoff game. But, again, that's why Georgia's laying a really healthy number here between 2 teams that we thought were top 3 coming into the season. I'll say this. As far as the injuries, Jackson Smith-Njigba hasn't played all year. So, I mean, that was only going to be either a positive or, a neutral for Ohio State as far as how they played. They will get healthy at the running back position. Keep in mind, for a few games this year, Ohio State was down to a 3rd-string running back. The question is, can they hold up at the point of attack? I'll say this. Again, going back to the Michigan game, Ohio State did mainly help hold up to the point of attack. It was a couple of big-time runs in the second half that really, again, made that box score a little bit better than what it really was. If you look at the first half, Michigan couldn't actually run the ball. It was just a couple of what happened was Ohio State loaded up the line of scrimmage, and somehow Donovan Edwards broke through on a couple of big runs. Look, I know big plays are part of college football and whatnot, but if you take those runs out of there, Michigan, it's not like it was the year before where Michigan was gashing Ohio State 5-6 yards every single time that they handed the ball off. And I think, again, Ohio State will rise up to the challenge. They've been, obviously their manhood's been questioned with those 2 Michigan results. And it's also a rare time, you mentioned at the very top, where you get Ohio State as an underdog, you get Ohio State with a chip on the shoulder. It doesn't happen very often for these blue blood type programs.
Yeah, I think Ryan Day is going to use that as motivation for his team. And on top of that, we just saw LSU put up 30 points with their backup quarterback in the SEC championship game on this Georgia defense. So maybe there was a bit of lacking motivation. They were playing a bit of a lead there sort of thing, but they can be God with elite quarterback play, and there's not many guys more elite in college football than CJ Stroud. So we're looking at Ohio State plus 6.5 in the Peach Bowl.